Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to this week's Game Day edition of the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us today will be one of our favorite guests, Chris Balas from the Wolverine Magazine and the Wolverine ON3. We'll also hear a few thoughts from Wildcat coach David Braun as his team comes in fighting for bowl eligibility this Saturday, just like us. First, my view from Section 17 to get us going. A season that started with such high expectations is winding down now. Saturday, Northwestern visits the Big House for the final home game of the year. That means it's also Senior Day, and we will say goodbye and thank you to a lot of young men that have been part of the last 3 glorious years. You know they are disappointed too, but they are also proud. They will not want their careers to end on Saturday with a loss. I expect maximum effort against Northwestern. I've said all year that every week is an adventure with this team. I expect that will be the case again, but I also think we'll find a way to get a win and get bowl eligible. That is very important for the future of the program. In his Monday presser, David Braun said his Wildcats must establish the run game early on Saturday.
Incredible opportunity in front of us in Ann Arbor against a very good Michigan team, very talented, a team that is certainly line of scrimmage based, going to look to establish a run game, stay committed to a run game, very talented up front.
Even though that's the game plan, Braun knows moving the ball against Michigan's defense will be a challenge.
Defensive coordinator with a ton of NFL experience, very multiple, very well thought out, very much pressure oriented. Saw a lot of looks, from Ohio State, pressured much more than they had shown in the past leading into our game. Would anticipate, a heavy dose of pressure from Michigan's defense this week. But it's an exciting challenge for this football team, a football team that, we feel is improving in some areas, certainly have a lot of work to do. We have 2 more guaranteed opportunities and, excited to go on the road and put ourselves in a position to win a football game and work towards bowl eligibility.
On defense, Braun said their game plan is simply this: stop the run.
Priority number 1 for us defensively in the Big Ten is to stop the run, and that will certainly get tested this week against Michigan. You always have to evaluate what you're potentially giving up or exposing yourself to in that commitment to stopping the run game. Michigan, very, very talented tight end that can create some matchup issues. Again, you go back and look at some of the Minnesota game and some of the plays that Michigan was able to hit in the passing game. It's against some loaded boxes, so you just have to continue to make sure that you have balance in your structure of your plan. But what I can say with absolute conviction, if we don't effectively stop the run against Michigan, it's not going to be the outcome we're looking for.
My guest today thinks Saturday's game is going to be a low-scoring battle. He says if the defense brings their A game, we should scratch out a W against a well-coached and pesky Northwestern team. Joining us next is Chris Balas from the Wolverine Magazine and the Wolverine ON3. So stay with us. Joining us today in our game day segment is Chris Balas from the Wolverine Magazine and the Wolverine ON3. Great to have you back again, Chris.
Mike, thanks for having me, buddy.
Well, heaven knows, Chris, this team needed the bye week, a second bye week, to, hopefully fix some things. Right now, though, at week 10, it's hard to know where to begin with that, isn't it?
It is. It's nice to have guys back healthy. At the same time, some of these guys that they're getting back haven't been playing very well. So, and I hate to say that. You hate to be brutally honest, but the offensive line has been underachieving this year, for example. The guy you really want to see come back is Will Johnson. Get him back for this game and then get him back for Ohio State, because you're going to need him to have any shot. We know it's a long shot, but to have any shot, you need your All-American corner out there right against that passing attack.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how it goes. But I was encouraged by what Sharon Moore said this week. He said they called it buy-in week, and he talked to the leaders, and he talked to the guys who won't be here next year because they'll be in the NFL, and they said they're still bought in, and they are still excited about playing. They're going to play for the uniform, and these are guys with rings, right? And they don't want their legacy to be that they bailed on this team. So, and, in our lifetimes, Mike, we're getting up there. We're getting a little older. Not up there, but we're getting older. And you appreciate every Michigan football Saturday a little bit more, right? There are only so many opportunities to watch Michigan football in your lifetime. And so we will embrace it and hope they play well. I can remember past years where, bad Michigan teams at the start got better and better and better. A week or two before Ohio State, they're blowing teams out, and then all of a sudden they play their best game against Ohio State. Now, I'm not sure that I expect that, but at least there's that hope, right? You come out and you play a great game against Northwestern, and then you go down there and see what happens, because, frankly, right now, the only thing that salvages this season, in my opinion, is a win over the Buckeyes, which, again, we know is probably a long shot.
Oh, yeah. But as you said, we live in hope, and we've seen it before where some, average to good Michigan teams have gone down to Columbus or vice versa and beaten the Buckeyes. So we'll wait and see. It would be nice, as you said, to get Will Johnson back. I know the last couple of weeks, Sharon at the presser has been saying he'll be back. He's going to play again. But, hey, it's week 11. I guess is it a turf toe? Is that the main thing?
That's what people are saying, and that's a brutal injury. I mean, it's been a career ender for some people, and I don't think people understand that. When you hear, it's just a toe injury, right? But turf toe can be really brutal, and I know that Will Johnson wants to play. I do. We know the Johnson family, and I know that he was really discouraged when he couldn't go back in against Illinois, and so all these people talking about how he's shutting it down, I don't buy that. I don't believe it. So I just think that it's one of those injuries that lingers and lingers, and the only thing that allows it to get better is rest. And he's got to worry about his career too, his long-term career. This isn't the old days, right? When you pop a shoulder back in and you go out there and you play. I remember John Jansen telling me one time, Michigan's All-American offensive tackle in the pros, he taped a piece of PVC pipe to the back of his leg to replace a ligament that had torn. And I'm like, I think those days are over, right? So hopefully he's out there, buddy. But I like the mentality still. These guys played hard. Let's be honest. They played hard against Indiana, especially defensively in the second half. So there's hope there. I think that we will see an inspired game on Saturday.
Well, it is the last home game of the season on Saturday. It's senior day, a struggling but game Northwestern team in town. Offensively, the Wildcats, they're just not that good statistically, one of the worst teams in college football. But doggone it, they moved the ball pretty well against Ohio State in the first half last weekend. I can't see them having much success against our defense, though. Can you, Chris?
No, I can't. As long as Michigan comes to play, which I expect. In that last game, you don't want your last game at Michigan Stadium to be a stinker, right? You want to play and you want to remember it for being a win. The last time you run out of that tunnel, you're right. They came out. They play hard. Northwestern does. That's kind of a trademark of that program, and they kind of punched them in the mouth early. And if not for a couple bad breaks, I think that would have been a better game for a lot longer. And that just goes to show you that you can't take anything for granted, right? So the concern is that Michigan's offense isn't any better, frankly, than Northwestern's. And so it could be one of those rock fights where you're going back and forth, and maybe the defense has to create some turnovers. Maybe the defense has to put you in better positions. Tommy Doman's got to have a good punting day, and he did against Indiana until the very end there. unfortunately, when it really mattered, and that's important. I don't think people realize what a drop off that's been this year and how important that's been. If you're playing the way that Michigan wants to play, you have to have a field position changer, and Tommy Doman has not been that for the majority of the year. But I really believe that Michigan's defense will be the difference in this game. It should probably be a lower scoring game. We know Michigan's got a kicker, right? Dominic Zvada should probably win the Lou Groza Award if things go right. And so that's what I'm looking at. And hopefully, though, that offense, Mike, can get going to the point where we have some hope again. You know, I think Davis Warren's doing a better job protecting the ball, but it really comes down to that offensive line and how well they play these next few days, these next few games.
Yeah, and we're definitely disappointed in the offensive line play. I know those guys are too. I mean, it hasn't been horrible. It's just been inconsistent. And I think to myself, did we expect too much from these guys, Chris? On your podcast, you and Doug Skeen a week or so ago, Doug mentioned, well, maybe we're asking them to do some things they just can't do. It is a big question, isn't it?
It is, and these were things that he was saying during the Brady Hoke era, and that's what worries me. Like a couple of blocks that you're putting these guys in position that I don't think we've seen the last 3 years. Where, okay, you've got to get, as an offensive lineman, what Skeen points out is, okay, this guy's got to get from point A to point B, and even if you're an All-American, to try to make this block is going to be really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
And so he's not even really talking about the talent, but he's talking about the offense and the scheme and saying, okay, this is really, you're making it real too hard on these guys. So, but what I would say to that is that, look, you've got, these guys are the ones that set the expectation for this offensive line. They were talking about Miles Hinton potentially being a first-round pick. They were talking about, we've seen, for example, Josh Creed play great football at Northwestern, and he has not reached that level here at Michigan, but he was all Big Ten last year, I think second or third team at Northwestern as a guard. Gio Al-Hadi, Grant Newsome, Michigan's offensive line coach, said he'd be in the NFL if he hadn't been playing behind a couple of NFL guards. He'd be there already. He has not played anywhere close to that level. And again, I don't like to pick on kids, but he's got to pick it up and play to his potential, because we've seen him play better football here before. Now, right tackle is a different thing altogether, because they just didn't have. I really thought Andrew Gentry would be ready for that role as a former top 100 guy. And he gets beat out by a redshirt freshman who's having a really hard time in pass protection, and Evan Link. So I think 4 of the 5 positions I really believe should be better than they are. It feels like, although Miles Hinton's playing some good football in center, again, center too is such a huge position, has been a hit and miss. So maybe the long-winded answer to your question is maybe we expected too much of them, but I don't think a lot of these guys are reaching their potential either.
And Kirk Campbell's game plans and play calling have been, sort of roundly criticized up to this point. Do you think it's been that bad, or is it maybe more than just the play calling that's to blame?
Yeah, it's 100% more than that, right? And when you get pressured on 61.8% of your dropbacks, Pro Football Focus had that stat that was the case for Davis Warren against Indiana. How do you game plan for that, right? Unless you've got a guy back there, a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who's running around and can make plays, and Davis Warren's not that. He's throwing off his back foot. He missed some throws, and everybody wants to blame the quarterback because that's the obvious one, right? That's the obvious thing. You look at the position, and if he misses a throw, it's got to be his fault. But as Sharon Moore said after that Indiana game, he said this kid's running for his life half the time, and we've got to do better. There was no running game, right? There's really been no running game in the last 3 weeks. And without a running game, it makes it a lot harder for play action. It makes it a lot harder for everything. If you have to depend solely on a passing game that has no pass blocking, it was abysmal, right, against Indiana. What's your game plan? And so, are there some things that could be better? Absolutely. Some of the play calls, and for example, against Oregon, a bad time to pull out a trick play on 4th and 5 with Alex Orji out there when everybody knows it's probably coming. And but again, with errors behind the sticks so often because they just aren't getting it done up front on 1st and 2nd down, that it makes it really, really hard. So hopefully they can figure some things out. Hopefully the guys up front do a little bit better job, and hopefully they get that running game going again. I want to see Khalil Mullings return to form, and I think that would give them an opportunity here in these last two games to do some things.
Yeah, it all circles back to the offensive line play, no question about that. And yeah, I'd like to see Khalil early establish that running game. And, one of the things with the offense this year, I thought we would eventually see is Donovan Edwards being used more out of the backfield as a receiver, maybe split out as a receiver. That's been non-existent this year, hasn't it?
It has. And, I think part of it is they think that, okay, we've got two guys with similar skill sets at least, and we've got one backup running back, so we need to make sure he's fresh. But when things aren't working, as somebody said, one of my coaching buddies said, you got to go away from the conventional and do some non-conventional things. And the one thing Kirk Campbell, and I'll go back to this in the spring, used to say is we need to get our best 11 on the field. To me, your best 11 includes Donovan Edwards out there in some capacity at the same time as Khalil Mullins. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen a whole lot of that. So we've seen some of it, and sometimes it's been successful. But I know that Donovan can catch the ball, and we've seen him do it. And to me, that might be his best position at the next level, right? As a third down back or a guy who can line up in the slot at times and do a bunch of different things. So I'm not quite sure why we haven't, but that's above my pay grade. I guess that's why they pay these guys the big bucks. And these receivers, Mike, you know what? I can't tell. I really thought Tyler Morris was going to have a much better year, and I think he's a better receiver than we are seeing. I don't know that if they're just not putting him in positions to succeed, or the pass blocking hasn't been there for long enough for him to get open, or what. But they need help there. And when I know we're probably when we think about next year, and I hate to look ahead, but they're going to need an overhaul in so many positions, but that's where it starts too. You got to have guys that can get open and catch the ball.
Well, in his Monday presser, Sharon talked about how important it was for this team to, get to a bowl game, get bowl eligible. For the seniors and for the future, it is incredibly important, isn't it?
It is, and there's kind of a double-edged sword, though, right? You want to develop your young guys, but you got to secure your young guys first, and that part of the deal these days is making sure that you are taking care of your guys that you want to be here next year and saying, look, I know you're going to get calls from agents. What can we do to keep you here? You don't want to be developing in them for somebody else, right? And we know that there are going to be a lot of guys that are sitting out the bowl game. I'm sure the Stars will be, and it makes perfect sense. The Pinstripe Bowl or the Music City Bowl, this is a different era. And 10 years ago, I'd have said, how dare these guys on scholarship sit out a game at Michigan, and I think Jim Harbaugh kind of shared the same view, right? When some of his guys sat out I think it was the Peach Bowl a while back, and he's like, man, how could you not want to play football for Michigan? Well, again, business decisions, but to me, it is important because there are a lot of young guys that they were talking about, Mason Curtis and Josiah Edmond, and guys like that, Cole Sullivan, that are really going to be big parts of this team next year. Andrew Stuber, I think, will be a starting tackle out there. You want to get these guys as many reps as you can to prepare for next year. Yes, you're going to be supplementing them with the portal, but these are talented guys that are going to be a big part of your program going forward as long as you secure them, which I know that Sean McGee, the GM, is working on. So that's what we're hoping for, and that's why, again, this game on Saturday is so important.
Well, whatever happens on Saturday, Sharon and staff have to keep looking to the future while living in the present. And we've all heard the Bryce Underwood talk in the last few weeks. Would you be shocked if he flipped from LSU?
2 weeks ago, I said yes. And then I saw the LSU-Florida game.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to be making some changes as much as Michigan is. And so they've got a decision to make, right? Do you keep some guys on the staff in place because you're going to get Bryce Underwood and you hope that he's going to elevate those guys, or because they're calling for heads down there, Mike? They are really upset. And so people that I've talked to close to him have said that, he's always been about LSU, and he's talking about LSU constantly. And, it's a pipe dream for Michigan, even with the big offer allegedly out there for him to come to Michigan. And there's, Michigan's NIL has improved to the point where they are willing to make him a big offer. But today I would say there's a better chance than I thought. I would still be a little bit surprised, but I will say this: if we see him at that Northwestern game on Saturday, then I think there's a legit chance. I think that he'd be willing to listen. I think there are people in his camp that really would like to see him at Michigan. And again, I don't really know how I feel about this when you're throwing a ton of money at a kid to come here when his heart might be elsewhere.
Yeah.
But then I go back to guys like Lamar Woodley, whose heart was all Michigan State until it wasn't, right? And he made the decision that was best for him, and he became all maize and blue the second he got here and became a great Michigan man. So you need talent, Mike. That's what it boils down to. But you just hope that they can preserve a culture where there's no jealousy. You hope that it's more Alabama, Georgia than, remember, Texas A&M when they threw a bunch of money at a bunch of kids and they ruined the locker room. So that's what you hope for. But to me, I think there is a shot at Bryce Underwood at this point. And until he signs, we're going to continue to watch it.
Well, whatever happens with Bryce Underwood, it's going to happen quickly in the next couple of weeks. But we know changes need to be made on the roster. And it seems as if this season has been sort of a wake-up call to boosters, because the NIL money is sure showing up now, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, and we predicted that. We said, it's going to take some losing. Losing's one hell of a motivator. And that's the unfortunate truth, right? That, okay, we knew that Michigan was kind of behind and that they weren't doing enough to put them in position to be competitive when people are spending. And the reason that they can do this now, right, is that temporary injunction from Tennessee when they fought it and said, look, this is, and a judge agreed that, hey, paying players is essentially part of NIL. So it's legal. And but to me, it's one of those things where if you look at the program overall, right, and where things stand now, it's more about can you preserve the culture in the NIL era?
Right.
And to me, I believe you can, and we've seen teams doing it over the years. You look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, for example, who've been doing NIL before NIL existed, right? And that's Sharon Lord, to me, that is his biggest challenge is to get these guys to not only buy in when they have the money, when they're all getting their money, to buy in to not just to be here for the money, but they still have to buy in as a team. He said they wanted them to still be transformational. From the sense that, okay, the money's going to dry up someday when the football is over, but you're still going to have your Michigan degree, and being at Michigan still means something.
Well, we have plenty of time in the coming months to deal with that and talk about that. But final question before we let you get away, Chris. Hopefully we get the W on Saturday, take care of that, and see some good things. I mean, even though it's late in the season, we want to see some progress. But next week, we know where we're going. We know who we're playing. What are your early thoughts on that game, Chris?
There's always hope, I think, if you bring it, because there's a lot of talent still on this Michigan team, especially defensively. And what gives me hope is you look at what Nebraska did when they went down there, right? That's not a good Nebraska team, and they gave Ohio State all they could handle. And if they'd gotten some breaks, they probably win that football game. I'll be honest. And Michigan's going to be out talented at a lot of spots, but it still comes down to what happens in the trenches, as we've seen the last 3 years. And if that Michigan defense plays above its head, which it's going to have to do, and gets a few breaks, I think that Michigan can hang. And we saw bad Michigan teams under Brady Hoke go down there and come close. They came close at home a couple of times too. If they play to their ability, and then I think that there's a puncher's chance. So maybe you win 2 out of 100 or 3 out of 100, but maybe that Saturday is your day. And so we'll see. I'm not expecting it. I think Michigan will be probably about a 20-point underdog, which is crazy. But stranger things have happened in our lifetimes, and we've seen them. So here's hoping, because, man, to rip their hearts out and to see some Buckeye tears would be one heck of a way to end this season.
Oh, that would be sweet. So first things first, let's get Northwestern on Saturday and then take care of the Buckeyes. So much going on here in the next couple of weeks and then the off season. And I know we'll have you back to talk about that. But our guest today has been Chris Balas from the Wolverine Magazine and the Wolverine ON3. As always, Chris, a pleasure having you on the show with us. And we look forward to another visit soon.
Anytime, Mike. Thanks for having me.
On Quick Hits today, at his Monday presser, Sharon said he's not sure if Will Johnson will be ready to play on Saturday. He's hopeful, but as he said, it's up to the medical staff. Here are a few game day notes of interest for you. Michigan has an all-time record of 59 wins, 15 losses, and 2 ties against the Wildcats. The first meeting was in Chicago on October 29, 1892, a 10-8 win for Northwestern. The last time these two teams met was on October 23rd of 2021 in Ann Arbor, a 33-7 Michigan win. Head coach David Braun has a record of 12-11 in his almost 2 years on the job. The Wildcats were 8-5 overall last year, 5-4 in the Big Ten, which tied them for second in the West. They ended the season in the Las Vegas Bowl with a 14-7 win over Utah. They are 4-6 heading into Saturday's game. The weatherman says it will be a classic November football day for the season finale. Cloudy skies, winds gusting up to 18 miles an hour, and temps in the mid-40s. It should also be a dry day. Again, this isn't the season we as fans envisioned when we kicked it off in August. The last 3 years have really spoiled us in a way. While we didn't see this kind of drop-off coming, we should have known it was possible with a new coaching staff and a new offense. We'll be okay in the future, but for now we need to close the season at home on a positive note and get bowl eligible. We know what's coming next, the game. We will be heavy underdogs for the first time in years, and it will take an effort, the likes of which we haven't seen yet from this team, to upend the Buckeyes. We've seen it happen before, though, even though it's hard to imagine this year. It's still the game, though, and I expect we will come ready to play. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, my scheduled guest will be Ohio State beat writer Tim May from On3's Letterman Row. On Thursday, we'll be joined once again, as is our tradition, by the angel of the Big House, beat writer Angelique Schengelis from the Detroit News. Angelique has joined me to preview the game for 13 years now. Of course, we did miss the COVID year, so make sure you join us. That does it for now. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Northwestern. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!